the first item on our agenda is the Woodbridge Country Club status of foreclosure. And as you all know, the Woodbridge Country Club is located on a parcel of approximately 141 acres, bounded by and is currently zoned as a single-family residential. The Country Club is permitted by special permit after a hearing, and the Woodbridge Country Club operates pursuant to such a permit and has operated for many years as a golf club. You can see it there on the screen. As you also know, Woodbridge Note Investors LLC has brought a foreclosure action dated and served on February 16, 2009 against the Woodbridge Country Club Incorporated and 4 other defendants, including the town of Woodbridge, which was filed with the Superior Court in New Haven on March 3, 2009. Attorney Jim Perito, our town counsel, will shortly give you a report on the status of the foreclosure. He will identify the parties to the foreclosure, the amount of the debt, the types of foreclosure that are available, strict foreclosure and foreclosure by sale, what has happened in the foreclosure action since it was filed in the court, how this affects the town of Woodbridge in the foreclosure action, what we can expect to happen in the foreclosure action, and options available to the town. Given the size of the parcel and its location, it is the unanimous consensus of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance that the town should authorize the first selectman to negotiate the potential purchase of all or part of the Woodbridge Country Club property for a purchase price sufficient to pay the liens encumbering the Woodbridge Country Club property. Of course, any such offer would be subject to final approval by the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and a town meeting. It is the intention of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance in purchasing this property to control its development and develop a plan to use the property so that it can produce an income stream to help defray the cost of purchase. Uses of the property might include a municipal private golf course, private development, some combination of the two, or other options. This will be a plan if the town purchases the property, which would be worked out subsequently. The Conservation Commission has endorsed the purchase of the property by the town and the development of a plan to control the development of the property. Attorney Perito will explain the procedures for the town to purchase the property in regard to actions to be taken by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance and the process for approval by a town meeting. I anticipate that a motion to authorize the first selectman to negotiate a purchase of the Woodbridge Country Club property as I described will be made after the conclusion of the public comments tonight. The Woodbridge Country Club has scheduled a meeting of its membership on Sunday, March 29th to act on a proposal by the Woodbridge Note Investors and possibly other proposals. If the Board of Selectmen adopts the motion authorizing the first selectman to negotiate the purchase of the Woodbridge Country Club property, we plan to submit that proposal in writing to the Woodbridge Country Club membership for action on its meeting on Sunday, March 29th. If you are in favor of such action and you know members of the Woodbridge Country Club, I suggest you contact them and encourage them to support the sale of the Woodbridge Country Club to the town of Woodbridge as I have described. Following Attorney Perito's presentation, Tony Genovese, our financial director, will review the financial aspects of such a purchase. That will include the status of the town's debt and bonding, recent debt issued by the town of Woodbridge, proposed projects that would require bonding, 6-year capital plan for bondable projects, the town debt status, municipal fiscal indicators, and financing options for the purchase of the Woodbridge Country Club. Following Mr. Genovese's presentation, we'll open the floor for public comments. So with that, I'll call on Attorney Carito.
Thank you, Ed. I'll keep this short. I want to get to your comments as soon as possible. As Ed mentioned, Woodbridge Note Investors LLC is the plaintiff in the foreclosure, which was commenced on or about February 16th with a return date to court of March 3rd. From the face of the complaint, the following were named defendants: Woodbridge Country Club, Inc., Standard Oil of Connecticut, Inc., the State of Connecticut Department of Revenue Services, the Town of Woodbridge, and Crail Coal and Oil Company, Inc. In the face of the complaint, the stated amounts that were due these various defendants as well as the plaintiff were as follows. The Woodbridge Note Investors holds a first mortgage that was given in 2005 to Hudson United Bank, which became TD Bank North and now is Woodbridge Note, for a face principal amount of $3,753,536.04. They also hold a second mortgage, which was given in 2006, originally to Commerce National Bank, which became TD Bank North and now WNI, for $1 million. Standard Oil's debt was listed as $7,565. The Woodbridge lien for personal property, approximately $5,400. Crail Oil, $15,809.45. And the State of Connecticut Department of Revenue Services, $144,698.90. In addition, the Bank of Southern Connecticut holds a first mortgage on Lot 11, which is also known as 60 Woodfield Road, in the amount of $400,000. That is not affected by this action, nor is the Town of Woodbridge's real estate taxes, which the second half was not paid and is still due and owing, which is approximately $77,000 with interest through this month. That's in the first position. It's not affected at all by the foreclosure. Most recently, the plaintiff filed a certificate of attachment in the amount of $256,908.75, which is my understanding is to secure debts that were owed as well to TD Bank North that is now owned by Woodbridge Note Investors that were originally not secured. So the total of the principal amount due, and this will not include any outstanding accrued interest or legal fees or expenses that are associated with the foreclosure, appears to be $5,583,916. A foreclosing party can request either a foreclosure by sale or a strict foreclosure. If it's requested to go by sale, that's typically ordered if there's sufficient equity to pay all the debts or sufficient equity to go to the owner. Strict foreclosure means that the lien holders, those that the defendants in the action, are assigned what's called a law day. And the court decides in reverse order of the encumbrances, giving the owner of the property the first day, and then the most junior encumbrants are up the line a day that they are able to pay the amount of the debt that the court will find at the time judgment is entered. And if they pay that amount of the debt, then they own the property subject to whatever liens are headed. If they don't pay on their assigned law day, then their lien is wiped out and it proceeds until the foreclosing plaintiff obtains title. No one has redeemed on their day. At this point, the defendants have not been defaulted, nor have any motions for judgment been filed. This most likely would occur over the next month, with judgment entering sometime in late April or May, and law dates for a sale thereafter. As a defendant in the action, the town would have had the right to seek a foreclosure by sale if there's sufficient equity, or to redeem on our appointment law day. However, the lien for personal property taxes was paid by check this past Friday, May 20th. Assuming that that check clears, the town's lien will be released. I did receive a copy today of the withdrawal of action that was filed by the plaintiff, withdrawing the matter as it pertains to the town. So at this point, the town is no longer a part of the foreclosure action and would not be getting a law day. This leaves the town with other options. The obvious one is to attempt to negotiate the purchase with the country club. As Ed mentioned, any purchase has to go through several procedures. The first being that the Board of Selectmen would pass a resolution approving a purchase. Since the funding would be deemed a capital expenditure, the Board of Selectmen would be deemed to be the spending entity that would request from the Board of Finance a recommendation. They then have to either approve, disapprove, or make no recommendation, and then it goes back to the Board of Selectmen to have a set up a town meeting where a 2/3 vote is needed for approval. If at that town meeting there's not a 2/3 vote, but there's over 50%, it then goes to the second town meeting where you need at least a 50% vote to approve that. So that's the process. If the board proceeds to attempt to negotiate the purchase and the country club agrees to sell it to the town.
Okay, Tony Genovese will now discuss the status of the town debt.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say a few words about the status of our town debt, and just to give you a little snapshot of where we are as a town. So the first, I guess, thing to mention is that our recent debt issuance by the town, $5.9 million, March 12th. That was for the new fire station. That had a 15-year term at 3.26%, and that was our first new money issue since 2003 when we did a number of things, including a roof at Beecher. So there is, of course, Amity debt that's issued, of which we are responsible for approximately 1/3, and that has also been issued since then. The proposed projects that are currently exist in the town's 6-year capital plan include $2.2 million towards a new public works complex, of which we have a little over $1 million already in grants for that project. There's a $9.4 million request by the Woodbridge Board of Education for some remediation work at Beecher School, and there is $3 million for open space acquisitions, or potential open space acquisitions in the 6-year plan. This totals a little over $20 million for the next 6 years. Keep in mind, these are proposed projects. They haven't been funded or voted on or have in any way been committed to, but rather are part of a 6-year plan that the town is considering. There will be more information about that at our budget hearing in April, if you're interested. This just gives you a snapshot of where the projects are in the capital budget. Again, this is just a plan that has been adopted by the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, but will require more discussion as the town proceeds. Again, these are projects that are under consideration but not funded yet by the town. So currently, the town has a little over $18 million in direct debt for all of our projects thus far. That's as of June 30th, 2009. And our portion of the Amity debt, which we are also responsible for as a town, is $19 million, which totals a little over $37 million in direct and overlapping debt as of June 30th, 2009. The annual debt service is the payment each year in the budget that has to pay down the debt, and that includes principal and interest costs. And again, the direct debt service for the town's budget is $2.4 million, and our percentage of the Amity overlapping debt service is $1.8 million, which gives us a little over $4.2 million annually. This is in fiscal year 10 towards debt service out of our budget. So in order to give that perspective, we examine what are known as municipal fiscal indicators. These are indicators that we track to compare us with other towns and to monitor our debt levels to make sure they're appropriate for a town of our size. The first is your debt and overlapping and direct debt as a percentage of your grand list. You can see ours is about 3.1, and the state average is about 2.4%, a little higher than the state average there. The second is the ratio of the debt, direct and overlapping debt service to our budget, and 10% is a guideline that is well known in the industry and is a sort of a guideline that we like to kind of keep in mind when we're issuing debt and incurring debt service. And you can see we're a little over that in fiscal year 10. It starts to drop as principal is paid off. Finally, debt per capita, and our debt, direct and overlapping debt service per capita for fiscal year 10 is $3,200, which is higher than the state average. But one thing to keep in mind is also the ability to pay, and some of the wealth numbers that Woodbridge has are also higher than a lot of other towns. So their ability to pay also exists with the other municipal fiscal indicators. And finally, financing options available to the town. There are several. These are just two that I wanted to highlight for you. The first are general obligation bonds. These are bonds that are supported by the full faith and credit of the town and are either paid with tax dollars or by some revenue stream. If paid by a revenue stream, that offsets the debt service and the impact on your fiscal indicators, and so that the net of the two is what you would consider. An example of this is the sewer debt. If there's a sewer use fee to be paid towards sewer debt, that's an example of that type of debt. The second is short-term notes. Oftentimes, short-term notes are issued for projects, capital projects that are starting, or if the town, or if say a municipality is not sure they want to incur the debt service, but rather short-term financing for a project that may or may not wind up as a town project. These notes can be issued up to annually up to 10 years and rolled into bonds at any time to incur permanent financing if that's the desire. Just one other comment on that is that 1/20th of the principal amount accrues annually at the beginning of the third year. So IRS regulations indicate that the town would have to start paying 1/20th of the principal amount that is issued under notes. It's at the end of year 3, which starts accruing at the beginning of year 3. So those are just some comments I wanted to make. Hopefully it's helpful. And that's it.
Okay, we'll now open it up to public comments. And please, there's a microphone there, as you can see in the center. And when you come up, just state your name and address. Make your comment and try to make it brief if you can.
I'm Chuck Ryan, 162 Center Road. A couple questions for Mr. Finance. Do you have any estimates as to what our wealth to debt ratio is? You had two or three ratios up there. If we go ahead and fund this thing in a couple different ways, what does that do in those numbers? Frankly, some of the numbers that you saw, that you showed us to be sort of on the cusp of where the state recommends we are. So if we're talking about going a little bit deeper into that, I understand there may be a wealthier community than the average, so that's to the advantage if you want to try to acquire this thing. But how much of a dent does that make?
It would depend on the total value of the borrowing and the intent of the borrowing, whether it's for permanent financing or short-term financing or financing with a revenue stream attached, would all have an impact on those numbers.
Okay, I guess we're at sort of a disadvantage as a public entity that we can't negotiate and keep a lot of numbers and intent quiet the way a private investor would, right? So we don't have that same benefit if we're negotiating for this parcel of property. Do you have a recommendation, or would you make a recommendation to the board as to which economically is the most feasible for us? And would you have to give the first selectman a budget to go to the negotiation with?
I would just identify where I think is a good level for the town to be. It's up to the Board of Selectmen and the residents to determine what their priorities are.
Okay, but is there any way to give you some framework to go and sit and have this pitch made on the 29th to the board of the Woodbridge Country Club? It sounds like we're on a pretty short time schedule here, aren't we?
We are. It's Sunday. But I think the idea here would be to, if we were to purchase this, we would use these bond anticipation notes. The principal doesn't have to be paid until the end of the third year. In that 3-year period, we would develop a plan for the development of this property with the intention of having income from it, either as a municipal golf course, other types of development. It would not be just completely open space. It would generate income to help defray the cost of the borrowing. And that's surely the intention of the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. We're going to be looking for income from this to defray the expense.
Okay, so there's still a lot of work to be done, just to make sure I understand. So you do have an idea which of those combination things is the one we want to chase if we're going to go after this parcel of property?
My anticipation and my expectation would be to bond the anticipation notes to allow us, and that would require a minimum expenditure of dollars in the first 3 years to develop this plan to generate income from the property and make it pay as much as it can for it, so.
Okay,
But so that we can control the development of this 141.
Are those development plans or prospective development opportunities, will those be developed among the town staff, or will we get one of the dreaded consultants to have to, send a check to one of those outside folks?
Well, we'll have to consider that. We'll consider all of those in that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Well, as Mr. Perito mentioned, the face amount of the debt in the complaint, I guess, is $5,583,000. So that's the area we're talking about. Something in that area.
Yes, he has that number. Anybody else?
All right, I'll repeat the question, yes. I mentioned the number and then this gentleman, can you give me your name, please? Irving Spivak, okay. And he wants to know if there will be any other proposals. We're led to believe that Woodbridge Note Investors, Inc. is going to make a proposal. And there may be other proposals that we don't know specifically about, but we anticipate that there may be. Yes, sir.
Living through a once-in-a-generation economic crisis, I'd like to ask you to speculate, and understanding that it's speculating, about the worst-case scenario effect upon our taxes. Specifically, if the price is at the high end, what would you think it'll be? And I'm not asking you for a number. And if the revenue is at the lowest end of what it could generate, could you speculate what effect such a purchase would have on taxes for Woodbridge residents?
We can't do that today, but you have to keep in mind that this is just the first step to get this on the table. This may or may not happen. But if it does happen, it'll have to be approved first by the Board of Selectmen, by the Board of Finance, and they'll have all those numbers at that time for their approval. And then it's going to come back to you people. And you're going to say yes or no. And it's going to have to be by a 2/3 vote, and unless it's just one vote over 50, and then you're going to have a second vote with one vote over 50 to approve it. But at the time you make that decision, you're going to have all that information in front of you. We're not in a position tonight to do that. We're just putting this on the table, trying to make a proposal to Woodbridge Country Club. It's going to be up to their membership to decide whether they want it or not. But we're going to be, we like to be in the considerations that they have in regard to this. Yes, sir.
Paul Harrigan, 1801 Road in Woodbridge. I think the real relevant cost is the cost to the town if the land is developed for residential use and we have 180 additional students in the school. The annual cost of that relative to what we could collect on taxes on those homes, or if the property is developed for commercial purposes or so-called affordable housing, what the cost is going to be to your property values and your investments in your property. I think those are the real relevant costs relative to the minor cost of purchasing the land, which $5 or $6 million seems like a lot of money, but relative to the cost of the town on an annual basis, if this land is developed for residential purposes, or the cost to your property values if the land is developed as affordable housing, dwarfs what the cost would be to the town to purchase the land. I have to say it, but I'm very in favor of the town purchasing the land. I think it would be a wise investment for the town's future. It would be wise investments for your property values, and it would avert a crisis in what would be much higher taxes for the town if it's developed as single-family houses. And again, if it's developed in commercial purposes or any other purposes, it's going to dramatically diminish the appeal of the town as a residential community with the stature that it has today.
Yes, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Harriet Cooper from Ford Road, and I first would like to thank the board. I'm a member of the Woodbridge Country Club, and we're very thankful that the board is interested in protecting this property and the concerns that the town has for this property. I'm also here to talk about it as a citizen of the town and as a member of the town. I live at 189 Ford Road, and I'm very much in favor of preserving the 150 acres at the Woodbridge Country Club. Once in a lifetime, an opportunity arises in a small town such as Woodbridge, where a large tract of land becomes available to the townspeople. This opportunity is upon us, and we need to seriously consider the consequences before making this important decision. The fabric of the town could drastically change. I've lived in Woodbridge for 34 years and sold real estate for 33 of those years. My family moved to Woodbridge for its proximity to Yale, the Amity school system, and the charm of the town, not unlike many of the families here tonight. The home values in Woodbridge are very much tied to these assets. Woodbridge is a destination town, meaning that buyers don't need to be encouraged to buy in this town once they find the right home at the right price. They've already heard about the town and want to come. Do you think a new senior housing facility would enhance the value of our homes to future buyers, or would a top-notch recreational facility add to our already impressive statistics? One of the ways of measuring the value of real estate is how to use the property for its highest and best use. So what is the highest and best use of this 150-acre facility? There are approximately 9,500 residents in the town, of which 1,800 are 65 years and older. Would it best serve the 1,800 seniors, which is 19% of the town, to build a senior housing complex, which some might never choose to use anyway, or would it best serve the 8,700 residents, which is 80% of the town, who can enjoy the club with young and older families in town? For those of you who have never visited the Woodbridge Country Club, it offers a top-notch 18-hole golf course, some say the best in the state, 2 swimming pools for kids and adults, prime tennis courts, top-of-the-line men and women's locker rooms, spa facility, snack bar, and an elegant dining room for private dining and catered affairs. It seems short-sighted to me to destroy this elegant facility to build more senior housing. It would only duplicate the senior housing that already exists in adjacent towns. It, however, would be a financial coup for any developer at the present price. Acquiring the Woodbridge Country Club would be an investment in the future of our town, and we need to permanently protect it. This land should be ours for safekeeping. Once we lose this opportunity, there is no going back. We're facing a very important decision.
Any other public comments?
Good evening, Mr. Sheehy, members of the board. My name is Marjorie Olenki-Wakeman, and I live on Johnson Road, which I'm told is about on the 7th hole of the Woodbridge Country Club. You may be familiar with our house. It's a big old white farmhouse that lies between Brookwood and Maple Terrace. It's a house built in the mid-1800s with wraparound porches and a koi pond, and we decorate for every holiday because we've young kids, so when you pass by, you'll know if it's St. Patrick's, you'll know if it's Christmas, you'll know if it's Easter, you'll know if it's Grandma's Day. We're grateful to you all for giving us this opportunity to articulate our thoughts about the Woodbridge Country Club and its foreclosure status and possible sale. While we received the important notice to community mailed to our home, we note that many of our neighbors did not receive that notice. Much of the information we know about this foreclosure and the current crisis faced by the Woodbridge Country Club is gleaned from newspaper accounts and not too many other sources. And so we are grateful to Attorney Perito for his articulation of the legal status of this matter, as well as to Mr. Genovese for his fine discussion of the financial aspects of our town and the proposed sale. To be clear, there are no commercial development plans proposed, suggested, or inferred by the current note holder and plaintiff in the foreclosure action, which are acceptable to me and to most of my neighbors. None. And so we are grateful that the town is considering the purchase of that parcel of property. We note from materials that have been emailed and distributed that there's a fact sheet and there's an anti-fact sheet which has been circulated in town. I'm not certain whether you all have been made aware of some of those documents, but at any point I would be glad to share them. In some of those materials, the note holder advises that he is a former Woodbridge resident, now a taxpayer only. I take that to mean that he no longer lives in our town, but only conducts business here. And I point this out to you all because the possibility exists that the town may not be successful in its efforts to purchase this property. And it is a consideration for all of us residing in town, and a concern for those of us about the nature of development that may ensue. I take it that this proposed investor's interest, therefore, is merely financial. He professes to be a good corporate citizen in the materials which he has distributed to us, and that may be so. The problem is that we don't need, want, or support the creation of corporate citizenry in a residential neighborhood. Now, the note holder, by his own account, is a successful and sophisticated businessman, but he has not engaged in this enterprise for charitable or community benefit, despite his comments in his materials to the contrary. It is apparent that the enterprise as proposed for this neighborhood is not advanced for the betterment of the residents in the neighborhood or the town of Woodbridge as a whole. The note holder expresses a willingness to allow the golf club to continue functioning as a golf club and as a swim club for a period of time. He has proposed 2 years, and I gather he is not unwilling to extend that. But this is only while he explores his own development options. For the town to permit this while the note holder chugs his way from Woodbridge Board to Woodbridge Commission, seeking zoning changes and variances and permits and approvals, is not in the best interests of the citizens of Woodbridge. And I think that many of you would agree that that is the case. While the parcel is served by city water and sewer, most of the residents and the properties surrounding the golf course and neighboring streets are not served by city water and city sewer. So movement of soil on this property will most certainly impact the homes in the neighborhoods abutting the golf course, certainly on Johnson Road. And I would ask that you be mindful that the properties surrounding the golf course, particularly on the Johnson Road side, preceded the zoning requirements of an 1.5 acre zoning. And as a consequence, many of these homes are smaller. The lots are smaller. And as a consequence, this means that the water and city sewer issue is a significant problem for some or many of us. So the impact to the rest of us could be significant and severe. Most of the roads encircling the golf course are narrow paved country roads and cannot support the traffic of construction development and the aftermath of development. Nor can our police and our volunteer fire department be expected to absorb the additional burden of service to development. While tax revenue would be generated by development, the ability of our fire department to provide services as a fully volunteer organization could well be jeopardized by yet another complex, senior or otherwise, in the town of Woodbridge. The WCC is not zoned for any of the projects suggested by this developer who suggests that his high-end, age-restricting housing plan is better than all alternatives, including affordable/higher density housing or construction of single-family homes. And we agree that these possibilities would further stress the school system and other community resources, in addition to impacting the resources as previously described. But I agree that the discussion of development, commercial or otherwise, should be preempted. And I believe that the town of Woodbridge, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and various other agencies are on the right track here in devising a plan to negotiate with the Woodbridge Country Club a sale of the property to the town of Woodbridge. I respect that this board continue to maintain its involvement and its scrutiny of the documents that are being filed here in Superior Court, and that the board permit the referendum on the issue of acquisition of the Woodbridge Country Club and that property known herein as the Woodbridge Country Club parcel. I thank you all.
My name is Bill Silverberg, 31 Jennifer Lane. I have a question for both you and Mr. Carino. You are going to, I assume, attend the meeting on Sunday at the Woodbridge Country Club.
We are going to submit, if this motion is approved by the Board of Selectmen, we will submit that to the membership of the Woodbridge Country Club.
What my concern is in terms of negotiation. Mr. Reese, I assume, wants to maintain control of his property. At that particular time, I would expect that, I would just guess, of course, that he's going to submit a bid, hopefully, at his point, somewhat higher than what you are going to bid for this property. Are you able to go in and negotiate at that time to cover his bid plus, or is the Woodbridge Country Club, which I understand to be a corporation, a non-stock corporation, can it accept under Connecticut law a bid for its, or a sale of its property at a price lower than the highest bid it is received?
I don't have the answer to that for that at this time, but we will submit, if this motion is adopted, we will submit it to the membership meeting of the Woodbridge Country Club on March 29th for their consideration. If they agree to start the negotiating process, then they'll start.
I see. There's a negotiation process that's being started at that time, not acceptance of bids.
Well, that's what we're going to submit. I don't know what anyone else is going to submit.
Thank you.
Gentleman here.
My name is Jim Hillis, 13 Dickinson Drive. I wanted to point out one thing, and that is that I'm concerned about the debt for the town. I don't know enough information if this is good for the town to buy or not, but I would point out one thing. My mother lives in a Dave Reese community. He is a high-class guy, and he has built a beautiful facility.
One option for financing this property is petition bond anticipation notes. We are historically low rates for short-term notes. Municipalities of our type are less than 1%. I think there was another municipality that was about 0.6 or 0.7%. So, that would be approximately $450,000 a year in interest costs, and those are. That would be a temporary way of financing the property with limited impact on tax dollars. Just so you have an idea that, only when you borrow, when you issue long-term bonds, that you start incurring significant dollars paid as principal. Just wanted to make that point.
So under that scenario, under the first 3 years, there'd be minimal expenditures of tax dollars to begin that process. During that time, the plan would be developed to generate revenue from the project. So hopefully to defray some or all of the expenses. Yes, sir.
Arnold Pyatt, Florida Drive. The only country club I'm aware of that was sold to a town entity was Longshore in Westport. And probably just when you started practicing law in 1961, 62.
67.
I thought you were a little younger than me. I remember the headlines in the papers. The town of Westport bought Longshore for a tax lien, and I believe it was $1 million. And if anybody's been to Longshore, the property is magnificent. It must be worth $20, $30, $40 million today. For the town not to buy the Woodbridge Country Club property, I think it was a great mistake. I mean, I think it's a booming town. I think if we don't buy it, it's short-sighted. I think 10 or 15 years from now, we'll be in the same position that the town of Westport was, and looking at it with a great bargain they got and buying a piece of property. If you have to pay $5 million, $6 million, hey, you know what you're doing, and I'm sure you'll be able to make it better.
David Loper. I live at 35 Buffalo Road. I used to live on Johnson Road, right across from the country club, and spent a lot of winters there with my boys and girls sledding. Just called Blue Rogers, buy land, we're not making it anymore. But the real issue here is what I think is the town's trump card, in that the town can or cannot issue a permit for the use of this land for development. I've seen lots of parcels of land that have come through negotiation of the building meetings and permit meetings, which have been denied permits because of either water on the property, because of undersized properties, and some of these things have never been developed. I wonder if the town can deny these variances in construction and permits and zoning to prevent this land from actually being developed, and therefore making it worthless and allowing you to negotiate on a much different level than were to be buildable.
You're addressing the question of development of CCRC on the property, continuing care residential.
Anything. And when obviously you have a running river on there, you have a run-up to the town. I know my basement in Johnson Road had about 2 feet of water every time there was a heavy rain. And it won't get better if there's construction there.
My understanding is that would require a change in zone. That's really not before us here tonight, but there is a process that the applicant will have to go through to get approval. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Robert Gregg, Old Quarry Road. 14 years ago, Woodbridge Land Trust and I made a presentation to this board in which we presented a financial engineering study I had made showing what the true cost of development was to a town. And we're not going through the details of this, but the conclusion of that study was that there was no piece of property that a town could not afford to buy. 14 years have passed, and that is more true than ever. This financial engineering study was the first that had ever been made without making a lot of assumptions as to services from a town for open space and the rest of it. It has been widely copied. A professor at the University of Connecticut, making speeches throughout the Northeast, has used these data as his talking point to show that towns can afford to buy open space. The bottom line is that there is no price that you have to pay for a piece of land like this Woodbridge Country Club that would be too much for the town. It has been pointed out that the true cost the town has to factor in the ongoing continuous expense of educating the children which would occur on this property, the services to it, and in the long run, the tax rate would go up dramatically due to the development. The tax rate will go up much faster from development than from buying the land. You have been encouraged tonight by almost all of the speakers here to negotiate for it. I urge you not to let dollar limitations happen in any way.
Michael Luther, Northrop Road. After these years, many of you know that of the 12 members on the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, I am the most conservative. What we are looking at tonight is, even for someone who's been in town over 50 years, an historic situation. An institution in our town has come a cropper. It happens. This is not the best time for the town to be increasing its debt. As the finance director has said, we continue to have projects coming at us that we are aware of and will have to fund. We have had given to us tonight the possibility at what this conservative says is a very reasonable cost to assure for ourselves over at least a period of 3 years the right to take our time, get our committees together, and make our decisions as our town as to what we want to have happen to this land. So, as long as you're seated, may I say that the arch conservative says it's worth every penny. That's all.
Hi, I'm Mal Chose, and I live on Wedgewood Drive. And what's going to happen if you are successful and do buy the property? What do you envision happening?
Well, if we were to acquire the property, then we would try to develop a plan to produce income from that property to pay for it. It could be a municipal or a private golf course, it could be private development with restrictions. I mean, that's something we have to study and come up with.
Okay, the golf season is rapidly approaching. A lot of people are planning on, are hoping to play there again this year.
That's another thing. Okay, any other comments? If not, then I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting, and then the meeting of the Board of Selectmen will resume. Thank you all for coming.
obviously just in advance of that meeting, let them know when this is coming, so that they're
We'll be in contact with the tree suppliers.
Jody to be the first.
So, the only comment I want to have here is that we have a purchase price sufficient to pay the liens and cover the property. I would move that we authorize me to negotiate. And anything that I negotiate is subject to the code.
I'll accept that as a recommendation.
So then the motion as amended reads, motion authorized the first selectman to negotiate the potential purchase of all or part of the Woodbridge Country Club property consisting of approximately 141 acres thereon. Any such offers will be subject to final approval by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and annual town meeting.
I think that gives you the latitude.
So, that's in the form of a motion. It's been made and seconded. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay.